A millionaire returns to his mansion for a quick lunch and is completely shocked to see a 7-year-old girl approaching, carrying an elegant tray with a sophisticated dish. With a trembling but determined voice, she whispers, "Sir, my mother is in the hospital. I came to cook in her place." When he asks how she managed to get into the mansion, her answer surprises him, and he does something that leaves her deeply shocked. The silence of the mansion enveloped Eduardo Sterling like a familiar cloak on that sunny Tuesday. At 52, the entrepreneur had built a financial empire based on iron discipline and absolute control. Every minute of his life was timed, every decision calculated with mathematical precision. His routine was sacred: return home at 12:15 p.m., eat lunch alone in exactly 15 minutes, and leave for the next meeting at 1 p.m. As he walked through the Italian marble corridors, Eduardo adjusted the cuff of his custom-tailored Italian shirt. The scent of white roses from the front garden mingled with the aroma of chamomile tea that his private cook, Helena, always prepared to accompany his meals. It was a ritual that calmed him, one of the few moments he allowed his mind to relax from the constant pressures of business. His fiancée, Veronica Thorne, had called 3 times that morning, insisting on details about the engagement party she was planning for the next month. Each conversation left him more tense, though he couldn't quite explain why. She spoke of illustrious guests, of the importance of impressing the right social circles, of how that party would further elevate his standing in society. Eduardo agreed mechanically, but something within him tightened with every word. The dining room awaited him with its usual elegance. The polished mahogany table reflected the golden light filtering through the silk curtains. The setting was impeccably arranged, with the French porcelain dinnerware laid out with millimeter precision. Eduardo pulled out his usual chair, the one that offered him the best view of the garden, and waited. Helena always appeared punctually at 12:20 p.m., carrying a silver tray with his favorite dish and a discreet but warm smile. She had worked for him for almost 3 years, and Eduardo had grown accustomed to her silent and efficient presence. They rarely spoke beyond polite greetings, but there was something comforting in her dedication. The wall clock struck 12:22 p.m. Eduardo's brow furrowed. Helena was never late. Perhaps there was a problem in the kitchen, or maybe she was preparing something special. He drummed his fingers on the table, a habit he developed when his routine was interrupted. It was then that he heard footsteps, not Helena's firm, familiar steps, but something different, small, hesitant steps that seemed to drag across the marble floor. Eduardo looked up, expecting to see his employee, but what he saw left him completely paralyzed. A small girl, appearing no older than 7, timidly approached the table. Her brown hair was tied in 2 messy braids, and she wore a simple, light blue dress that looked like it had been washed many times. In her small, trembling hands, she carried a silver tray that seemed too heavy for her. Eduardo felt as if the world had stopped. His eyes scanned every detail of the surreal scene. The girl struggling to balance the tray, the elegantly presented dish, and a small yellow flower placed as decoration next to the fork. She approached with a determination that contrasted with her apparent fragility. When she was a few feet from the table, the girl stopped and looked up at him. Her eyes were dark, bright, but Eduardo could see tears welling in them. She took a deep breath, as if gathering all the courage she possessed, and whispered with a voice that could barely contain its tremor, "Mr. Sterling, my mom is in the hospital. I came to cook in her place." Eduardo felt his heart race in a way it hadn't in years. Those simple words echoed through the dining room like silent thunder, carrying an emotional weight he couldn't fully comprehend at that moment. Eduardo remained motionless for long seconds, processing the impossible situation before his eyes. A child in his house, alone, carrying his meal as if it were the most natural thing in the world. 1,000 questions bombarded his mind. How had she gotten in? Where was security? And most importantly, What had happened to Helena? The girl remained standing, holding the tray with trembling hands. Eduardo noticed she was trying not to let the dish slide, biting her lower lip in intense concentration. There was something touching in her determination, something that stirred a strange feeling in his chest. "How did you get in here?" Eduardo asked, trying to keep his voice firm but not threatening. He slowly stood up, not wanting to scare the child further. The girl lowered her eyes for a moment, as if deciding whether to tell the truth. Then she lifted her chin with a courage that surprised Eduardo. "I took the keys from my mom's purse at the hospital," she said, her voice gaining a little more firmness. "She always talked about how you like to eat lunch at the same time every day. I didn't want you to be hungry." Eduardo felt something clench in his chest. The innocence of that answer, the genuine concern of a child for his well-being, was something completely new in his experience. He had expected anger, indignation at the invasion of his privacy. Instead, he found only a pure compassion that left him momentarily speechless. "Is your mother sick?" he asked, taking a step toward the girl. "She can't breathe properly," the child replied, and Eduardo saw a tear escape her face. "The doctors said she has a lung disease. She coughed a lot at home. But she didn't want to miss work because she said you needed her." Eduardo felt a knot in his throat. In the 3 years Helena had worked for him, he had never asked about her personal life, her family, or if she had problems. She was efficient, punctual, and discreet, and that was all he thought he needed to know. Now, standing before her daughter, he realized how negligent he had been. "What's your name?" he asked, softening his voice even more. "Sophia," she replied, wiping her face with her sleeve. "My mom always talks about you, Mr. Sterling. She says you're very smart and that you work hard to take care of many people." Eduardo moved closer, noticing how heavy the tray was for Sophia's small hands. Without thinking twice, he gently took it, placing it on the table. Sophia watched him with wide eyes, clearly surprised by his kindness. "Did you make this yourself?" he asked, observing the perfectly prepared dish. "My mom taught me some recipes," Sophia replied, with shy pride. "She said that if she ever couldn't come, I should take care of you because you're a good person." Eduardo felt Sophia's words echo in his mind. A good person. When was the last time someone had described him that way? Veronica spoke of his success, his wealth, his social standing. His business partners respected his shrewdness and determination. But goodness, that was a quality he had forgotten to cultivate a long time ago. Looking at Sophia, who was nervously awaiting his reaction, Eduardo made a decision that surprised even himself. He walked to the cabinet where he kept his special dinnerware, took out another plate and another set of cutlery, and placed them on the table, opposite his usual spot. "Sophia," he said, pulling out a chair for her, "how about we have lunch together today?" Sophia's eyes widened in surprise, and, for the first time since she arrived, a small but genuine smile lit up her face, completely transforming the atmosphere of the dining room. Sophia sat carefully in the chair, as if fearing she might break something. Her small legs dangled in the air, not reaching the floor, and Eduardo noticed how much smaller she looked in that grand room. He served the dish she had prepared, dividing it equally between the two of them, and was impressed by the careful presentation and delicious aroma. "Did you learn to cook from your mother?" Eduardo asked, cutting a piece of what appeared to be perfectly prepared risotto. Sophia nodded, her eyes shining with a mixture of pride and sadness. "She teaches me every afternoon after she comes home from work. She says cooking is a way to show love to people." She hesitated before continuing. But now she can't even get out of bed." Eduardo tasted the risotto and was genuinely surprised. The flavor was complex, balanced, demonstrating a technique far beyond what a 7-year-old child should master. "This is delicious, Sophia. You have a lot of talent." A shy smile lit up the girl's face. "Thank you, Mr. Sterling. My mom always says that food made with love tastes different. As they ate, Eduardo discreetly observed Sofia. She chewed slowly, savoring each mouthful as if it were precious. There was something in her demeanor that revealed a premature maturity, as if life had already taught her to value small pleasures. "Tell me about your mother," Eduardo asked, surprised by his own curiosity. Sofia wiped her mouth with her napkin before answering. "Her name is Helena. She's 42 and always wanted to be a cook. She says that when she was little, Grandma taught her recipes that were passed down from mother to daughter." Her voice grew softer. "Grandma died when I was a baby, so now it's just the two of us." Eduardo felt a pang in his chest. Helena had never mentioned that she was a single mother, raising Sofia alone. He began to understand why she never missed work, why she always seemed so dedicated. "And your father?" he asked gently. Sofia lowered her eyes. "He left when I was very little. My mom says some people don't know how to stay when things get hard." She looked up again. "But she says we don't need him because we're strong." Eduardo swallowed hard. Those words carried a wisdom and a pain that a child should not know. He thought about his own life, how he had isolated himself from people, building walls of success and wealth around himself. "How long has your mother not been feeling well?" he asked. "And she's been coughing a lot for about 2 months, Sofia replied, playing with her fork. She thought it was just a cold, but it got worse. She fainted yesterday morning before coming to work. The neighbor helped take her to the hospital." Eduardo felt a wave of guilt. 2 months. Helena had been coming to work sick for 2 months, and he hadn't noticed anything. Or perhaps he hadn't wanted to notice. It was easier to keep a distance, not get involved with employees' personal problems. "Which hospital is she in?" he asked. "At the county hospital. It's far from here, but that's where we can get free medical care." Sofia hesitated. The doctor said she needs expensive medicine and might have to stay hospitalized for a long time. Eduardo saw the fear in Sofia's eyes, despite her attempt to appear brave. A 7-year-old child, alone, worried about her sick mother, trying to maintain normalcy by coming to cook for an employer she barely knew. "Sofia," Eduardo said, putting down his fork, "do you have any relatives who can take care of you while your mother is in the hospital?" The girl shook her head. "Only Mrs. Rodriguez, our neighbor. She said she could give me dinner, but she's also very old and can't do much more." Eduardo felt something transform within him. That brave child trying to carry a burden that shouldn't be hers, awakened feelings in him that he had buried long ago. Eduardo cancelled his afternoon meetings. For the first time in years, something seemed more important than his business appointments. He watched Sofia finish her lunch with the same dedication with which she had prepared the meal, and a strange sense of protection grew in his chest. "Sofia, would you like to accompany me to visit your mother at the hospital?" he asked, surprising himself with his own words. Sofia's eyes widened in surprise, and, for the first time since she arrived, a small but genuine smile lit up her face, completely transforming the atmosphere of the dining room. During the ride to the hospital, Eduardo observed Sofia in the rearview mirror. She pointed to everything she saw out the window, asking questions about buildings, cars, people. Her curiosity was contagious, and Eduardo found himself seeing the city through her eyes. "My mom always wanted to take me to see this part of the city," Sofia said, observing the elegant buildings. "She says that one day, when I grow up, I'll be able to go anywhere I want." Eduardo felt a knot in his throat. That girl and her mother lived in a completely different reality from his, but they had dreams and hopes that he had forgotten to cultivate. The county hospital was a shocking contrast to the world of luxury Eduardo knew. Overcrowded corridors, the smell of cheap disinfectant, people waiting on broken plastic chairs. Sofia guided him through the corridors with familiarity, greeting nurses and other patients as if they were old acquaintances. "She's over there," Sofia whispered, pointing to a bed at the end of a ward with more than 20 patients. Eduardo followed Sofia and had to control himself not to show his shock. Helena, the woman he knew as efficient and always well presented, was unrecognizable. Too thin, pale, connected to what looked like antiquated machines. Her eyes widened when she saw Eduardo approach. "Mr. Sterling," she murmured, trying to sit up in bed. "I'm so sorry, Don't worry about that now," Eduardo interrupted, approaching the bed. "How are you feeling?" Helena began to cry. "Sir, I didn't want you to see me like this. And Sophia, she shouldn't have gone to your house. I always told her never to bother you." Sophia took her mother's hand. "Mom, he was very kind to me. We had lunch together, and he wasn't mad." Eduardo observed the interaction between mother and daughter, seeing the unconditional love that existed between them. Helena stroked Sophia's face with trembling fingers, and Eduardo realized how that woman had sacrificed everything for her daughter. "Helena," Eduardo said, pulling up a chair to sit beside the bed. "I need to understand what happened. Sophia told me you've been sick for 2 months." Helena lowered her eyes, ashamed. "I thought it would pass, sir. I didn't want to miss work. I know how much you value punctuality." Eduardo felt a wave of remorse. His obsession with control and perfection had prevented a loyal employee from seeking medical help when she needed it. "And what did the doctors say?" he asked. "Severe pneumonia," Helena replied in a weak voice. "And they said if I had sought help sooner." She didn't finish the sentence, but Eduardo understood the implication. Sophia held her mother's hand tightly. "She's going to be okay, right, Mr. Sterling?" Eduardo looked at that brave child, then at the fragile mother in the hospital bed, and knew that his life was about to change forever. Eduardo remained at the hospital until early evening, talking with doctors and nurses about Helena's condition. The information he received disturbed him deeply. The pneumonia had developed because she walked long distances in the rain to save money on transportation, arriving at work wet and chilled repeatedly. "She always arrived early and stayed late," said a nurse who knew Helena. "Even when sick, she came to the hospital during her off hours to care for other patients. She's a very special woman." Eduardo felt the weight of guilt pressing on his chest. While he wasted thousands of dollars on luxurious dinners, his most dedicated employee struggled to pay for basic transportation. He looked at Sophia, who had fallen asleep in the chair beside her mother's bed, and made his first important decision. "I want to transfer Helena to a private hospital," he told the doctor in charge. "The best one in the city." The doctor seemed surprised. "That would be excellent for her, sir. Here we do what we can. But our resources are limited." On the way back home, Sophia said little, clearly worried about her mother. Eduardo observed her in the rear-view mirror, watching her clutch a small rag doll she had brought from the hospital. "Is that doll special?" he asked. Sophia nodded. "My mom made it for me when I was little. She said whenever I felt lonely, I could hug the doll and remember that she loves me." Eduardo felt his heart clench. That child had learned to find comfort in simple gestures, while he had forgotten the meaning of true emotional intimacy. When they arrived at the mansion, Eduardo was determined to take care of Sophia until Helena recovered. He showed her one of the guest rooms, ensuring she had everything she needed. Sophia explored the room with admiration, but Eduardo noticed she carried her doll everywhere. "Are you hungry?" he asked. "A little," Sophia admitted. "But I can cook something for us." Eduardo shook his head. "Today, I'll cook for you." Sophia looked at him in surprise. "You know how to cook, Mr. Sterling?" Eduardo chuckled, a genuine laugh he hadn't felt in a long time. "We'll find out together." They spent the evening in the kitchen, Eduardo trying to prepare something simple while Sophia patiently guided him. It was a role reversal that amused and touched him at the same time. Sophia laughed at his clumsy attempts, but always encouraged him. "My mum says it doesn't matter if the food isn't perfect," Sophia said, watching Eduardo struggle with an omelette. What matters is the love you put into it. While they dined in the kitchen, Eduardo received a call from Veronica. His fiancée was furious because he had cancelled an important dinner with foreign investors. "Eduardo, you can't just disappear," she shouted over the phone. "That dinner was crucial for our plans." Eduardo looked at Sofia, who pretended not to listen, but was clearly uncomfortable with the shouting. "I had an emergency," he said calmly. "What kind of emergency is more important than our careers?" Veronica insisted. Eduardo hesitated. How to explain that he had discovered his employee was in the hospital, that her little daughter had touched his heart in a way he couldn't fully comprehend. "Veronica, can I call you tomorrow? I'm dealing with a delicate situation." "Dealing?" Veronica's voice dropped dangerously low. "Eduardo, you've been behaving very strangely lately. I hope you're not doing anything that could harm our image." After he hung up, Eduardo found Sofia watching him with concern. "She sounded mad," Sofia said timidly. Eduardo sighed. "Sometimes people get mad when they don't understand what's truly important." Sofia nodded as if she understood perfectly. "My mum says some people only see what they want, not what they need to see." Eduardo looked at that wise little girl and realized she was right. Veronica could only see status, money, appearances. But here, in that kitchen, he was seeing something far more valuable, the purity of a heart that still knew how to love unconditionally. The next morning, Eduardo woke with a strange sense of purpose. For the first time in years, he had something beyond numbers and meetings occupying his thoughts. He found Sofia in the kitchen, already dressed and trying to make breakfast. "Good morning," she said with a shy smile. "I wanted to do something to thank you for letting me stay here." Eduardo observed the carefully set table, perfectly golden toast, and fresh orange juice. The child's dedication deeply moved him. "Sofia, you don't need to feel obligated to do anything," he said, sitting beside her. "You are my guest." "My mom always says we should repay people's kindness," Sofia replied, serving him coffee. "She'd be sad if she knew I was here without helping at all." Eduardo was about to respond when he heard the sound of high heels echoing down the hallway. His stomach clenched as he recognized the familiar rhythm. Veronica had used her key to let herself into the mansion. "Eduardo!" Veronica's voice resonated through the house. "Where are you?" "We need to talk now." Sofia looked at Eduardo with wide eyes. "Is that the lady from yesterday on the phone?" Eduardo nodded, standing up. "Stay here, Sofia. I'll handle this." But before he could leave the kitchen, Veronica appeared in the doorway, impeccably dressed in a designer suit, her eyes scanning the scene with growing disapproval. "Eduardo, what on earth is going on here?" she asked, her eyes fixing on Sofia. "Who is this child?" Sofia cowered in her chair, clearly intimidated by Veronica's imposing presence. Eduardo felt a protective impulse that surprised him. "Veronica, this is Sofia, my cook's daughter," he said, stepping between the two. "She's staying here temporarily." Veronica laughed, but it was a cold, calculating laugh. "Temporarily. Eduardo, have you completely lost your mind? What kind of image does this project? A man of your standing cannot be seen playing father figure to an employee's child." Sofia lowered her eyes, her cheeks flushing with shame. Eduardo felt a rage grow within him, a rage he hadn't felt in a long time. "Veronica, her mother is sick. She needs help," he said, trying to keep his voice calm. "So what?" Veronica retorted, crossing her arms. "You can hire a nanny, send her to an orphanage, anything. But you can't be playing father figure with a child who isn't your responsibility." Eduardo watched Sofia shrink further, and something inside him snapped. "Veronica, you are being cruel." "Cruel?" Veronica moved closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. "Eduardo, you're being manipulated. This woman probably planned all this. Employees always try to take advantage of rich, lonely employers." "Manipulated?" Eduardo looked at Sofia, who was clearly trying not to cry. "She's 7 years old, Veronica." "Exactly!" Veronica gestured dramatically. Children are the best manipulators. She knows exactly how to play on your emotions. Sophia abruptly got up from the table, her hands trembling. I'll go to my room, she murmured, running out of the kitchen. Eduardo watched the girl leave, feeling his heart break. When he turned to Veronica, his eyes were filled with a cold fury she had never seen before. "Get out of my house," he said, his voice dangerously low. Veronica blinked, surprised. "Eduardo, you can't be serious. I'm just trying to protect you." "Protect?" Eduardo took a step toward her. "You just humiliated an innocent child in front of me. Get out, now!" Veronica recoiled, but her eyes gleamed with a dangerous light. "Very well, Eduardo, but you'll regret this. I won't allow you to destroy everything we've built because of an emotional whim." She left the kitchen, leaving Eduardo alone with the disturbing realization that the woman he planned to marry was a complete stranger to him. Eduardo rushed upstairs, looking for Sophia. He found her in the guest room, sitting on the bed, hugging her rag doll and crying silently. The sight broke his heart. "Sophia," he said softly, sitting on the edge of the bed. "I'm so sorry for what happened." Sophia raised her red eyes to him. "She's right, isn't she? I'm causing you trouble, Mr. Sterling." Eduardo felt a pain in his chest. "No, Sophia, you're not causing any trouble. She was wrong." "But she's your girlfriend," Sophia whispered. "She must be important to you, Mr. Sterling." Eduardo hesitated. How to explain to a 7-year-old child that he was starting to question everything in his life? "Sophia, sometimes we find out that the people we think are important actually aren't the ones who make us happy." Sophia looked at him with that premature wisdom he had come to recognize. "My mom says true love doesn't hurt others." Those simple words hit Eduardo like lightning. In all his years of relationship with Veronica, he had never felt truly loved, admired, desired for what he possessed, but never loved for who he truly was. "Do you want to go visit your mother?" he asked. Changing the subject, Sophia nodded enthusiastically. "Can I tell her you're even kinder than she imagined?" During the drive to the hospital, Eduardo received several calls from Veronica, all ignored. She also sent threatening messages, but he was focused on Sophia, who was humming softly in the back seat. At the hospital, they found Helena visibly better. The doctors had adjusted her medication, and she was breathing more easily. Her eyes lit up when she saw Eduardo. "Mr. Sterling, I don't know how to thank you for everything you're doing," she said, trying to sit up. "No need to thank me," Eduardo replied. "Sophia has been taking very good care of me." Helena smiled, watching her daughter. "She's always been very responsible. Sometimes I worry she's growing up too fast." Eduardo talked to Helena about her transfer to a private hospital, but she seemed reluctant. "Sir, that must cost a lot of money." "Let me worry about that," Eduardo said firmly. It was then that a nurse approached with a concerned expression. "Excuse me for interrupting, but there's been a complication with Helena's transfer." Eduardo frowned. "What kind of complication?" "It seems someone contacted the private hospital's administration, questioning the ability to pay. They're demanding a financial investigation before accepting the transfer." Eduardo felt his blood boil. Only one person had enough access to his life to cause this kind of problem. Financial investigation? That's ridiculous. "Sir, we also received an anonymous call suggesting that the patient's family might be taking advantage of you," the nurse continued, visibly uncomfortable. The person mentioned there should be an investigation into possible fraud." Helena turned pale. "Mr. Sterling, I swear I never asked you for anything. Sophia went there on her own." "I know that," Eduardo said, his voice tense with anger. "Someone is trying to sabotage the transfer." Sophia tugged at Eduardo's sleeve. "Mr. Sterling, was it the mad lady who did this?" Eduardo looked at that perceptive child and realized she had understood exactly what was happening. Don't worry, Sophia. I'll take care of it." At that moment, Eduardo made a decision that would change everything. He picked up the phone and called his personal attorney. "Mark, I need you to come to the county hospital now. Bring all necessary documents for an emergency medical transfer and prepare an investigation into malicious interference with medical treatment." When he hung up, he looked at Helena and Sophia. "And no one is going to stop you from getting the treatment you deserve." Sophia held his hand. "Thank you for protecting my mum." Eduardo squeezed her small hand, knowing he was about to face a battle that would define not only Helena's future, but the course of his own life. In the following days, Eduardo discovered just how far Veronica was willing to go to sabotage his help to Helena and Sophia. She had hired a private investigator to dig into the family's life, looking for anything she could use against them. Mr. Sterling, Mark, his lawyer, said during a meeting in his office, "Your fiancée is being very meticulous. She managed to access medical records, financial history, even conversations with Helena's neighbors." Eduardo felt a mixture of anger and disgust. And what did she discover? "Nothing that would undermine your decision to help," Mark replied. "Helena has an impeccable record. She's worked in several respectable households, always with excellent references. Sophia is doing well in school despite financial difficulties. They are genuinely upright people." Eduardo nodded, but he knew that a lack of evidence wouldn't stop Veronica from causing problems. And Helena's transfer. "We managed to complete it last night. She's already at Prestige Medical Center receiving the best possible treatment. But there have been more complications." Eduardo raised an eyebrow. "What kind of complications?" "Your fiancée has spread rumors in your social circles. She's saying you're having a nervous breakdown, that you're being manipulated by opportunists. Some of your business partners are concerned." Eduardo felt the weight of Veronica's manipulation. She knew exactly the weak points of his business reputation. "And is there more?" "She also contacted staff at your mansion, trying to get information about Sophia. She offered them money to reveal details about the girl's behavior." Eduardo clenched his fists. "She's investigating a 7-year-old child." "Worse than that," Mark continued. "She suggested to the staff that Sophia might be lying about her mother's illness, that it could all be an elaborate plan to get money." Eduardo stood up abruptly. "That's insane. Helena is literally fighting for her life in the hospital." "I know, sir. But Veronica is strategically planting doubts. She knows that if she can make people question your motivations, she can pressure you to give up helping the family." Eduardo walked to the window, observing the city below. "Mark, I want you to investigate Veronica. I want to know everything about her, especially her finances." "Sir, I have a suspicion that she's not who she pretends to be," Eduardo said, an intuition growing in his mind. "Someone who acts with such cruelty toward an innocent child must have their own secrets." That afternoon, Eduardo went to pick up Sophia from school. She had insisted on continuing to attend classes, even while temporarily living at the mansion. When he saw her leaving the school, he noticed she looked sad. "How was your day?" he asked in the car. Sophia hesitated before answering. "Some kids were asking about my mom. They said they heard their parents talking, that she's faking being sick." Eduardo felt a wave of anger. Veronica had gone so far as to use other children to target Sophia. "And what did you say?" "That my mom would never lie about something like that," Sophia replied, but Eduardo could see tears forming in her eyes. "But now I'm afraid people will think we're liars." Eduardo stopped the car and turned to her. "Sophia, look at me. I know you and your mother. You are the most honest people I have ever met. It doesn't matter what others say." Sophia wiped her eyes. "But what if it hurts you, Mr. Sterling? What if people stop doing business with you because of us?" Eduardo felt his heart clench. That child was sacrificing herself to protect him, just as her mother had done by coming to work sick. "Sophia, you don't have to worry about me. I'm an adult and I can take care of myself." "But the pretty lady said that—" Eduardo interrupted. "She talked to you?" Sophia nodded shyly. She called me at school. She said if I really cared about you, Mr. Sterling, I should leave before I destroyed your life. Eduardo felt a fury he had never experienced. Veronica had crossed every possible line by directly intimidating a child. Eduardo couldn't sleep that night. The thought of Veronica directly intimidating Sophia consumed him. He walked through the mansion corridors, stopping in front of the room where Sophia was sleeping. Through the slightly ajar door, he could see her hugging her rag doll, seeming worried, even in her sleep. The next morning, Mark called urgently. "Mr. Sterling, I need to see you immediately. I found something about Veronica that will shock you." Eduardo met his lawyer at a discreet cafe. Away from offices and curious glances, Mark looked tense, carrying a folder full of documents. "Eduardo, what I'm about to show you may be very difficult to accept," Mark said, opening the folder. "Veronica is not who she says she is." Eduardo felt his stomach clench. "What did you find?" "She's been siphoning money from your company for over a year," Mark said, showing bank statements, fake charity accounts, phantom suppliers, even non-existent employees. She stole over $2 million. Eduardo looked at the documents, feeling betrayed in a way he had never experienced. "How is that possible?" "She used her position as your fiancé to gain access to confidential information. Many of your employees trusted her because they thought it was only a matter of time until you got married." Eduardo leafed through the papers, seeing evidence of systematic betrayal. "And is there more? She also forged medical documents to try to prove that Helena was faking her illness. She bribed county hospital staff to provide false reports, creating evidence that the family was trying to trick you." Eduardo felt nauseous. She forged medical documents of a woman who was dying. "Even worse," Mark continued, "she also paid to have Helena's treatment sabotaged at the public hospital. Medications were lost, tests were delayed. She was literally trying to kill your employee to prove she was right." Eduardo stood up abruptly, knocking over his chair. "She tried to murder Helena. Not directly, but she knew that sabotaging the treatment could be fatal. She was willing to let a mother die to keep you under control." Eduardo walked to the window, trying to process the magnitude of the betrayal. The woman he planned to marry was a criminal who had tried to kill an innocent. "Is there more evidence?" he asked, his voice tense. "Recordings of conversations where she admits manipulating you. She bragged to a friend about how easy it was to control rich, lonely men. She said you were the perfect target because you had no close family to question her intentions." Eduardo felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. She said that. There's a recording where she laughs about you believing she loved you. She said you were pathetic and that she couldn't wait to get married and have full access to your money." Eduardo returned to the table, feeling shattered. What else? "She also hired people to intimidate Sophia at school. She paid other children to ask cruel questions about her mother. She's using children as psychological weapons." Eduardo clenched his fists. "This woman is a monster." "Eduardo, there's something else you need to know," Mark said, hesitating. "Veronica is planning something for this week. She hired a journalist to write an article about you, portraying you as an unstable executive who is being manipulated by opportunists." Eduardo looked at his lawyer. "She wants to destroy my reputation. She wants to force you to choose between your career and helping Helena and Sophia. She believes that if she creates enough public pressure, you'll give them up to protect your image." Eduardo felt a cold clarity settle in his mind. "Mark, I want you to prepare a full criminal complaint against Veronica. Fraud, medical sabotage, intimidation of a minor, everything. Sir, this will become public. It could affect your businesses." Eduardo thought of Sophia, sleeping wrapped around her doll, worried about protecting him even though she was just a child. "Some things are more important than business." Eduardo arrived home, determined to protect Sophia from the whole situation, but found the mansion strangely silent. He searched for the girl in the usual places, but she was nowhere to be found. Finally, he found a note written in her childlike handwriting on the kitchen table. "Mr. Sterling, thank you for everything you did for me and my mom. But I can't let people say bad things about you because of us. I'm going to take care of Mom by myself now. Sophia." Eduardo felt his world crumble. That brave child had decided to sacrifice herself to protect him, just as her mother had done by coming to work sick. He rushed to the phone and called the hospital. "Mr. Sterling," the nurse said, "Sophia came to visit her mother a few hours ago. She said she wasn't coming back to your house." Eduardo felt panic. "Where is she now?" "She left about an hour ago. Said she had some things to take care of." Eduardo hung up and immediately called Mark. "I need to find Sophia. She ran away to protect me." "Sir, I've already asked our investigators to look for her. But Eduardo, there's something else I need to tell you." Eduardo felt his stomach clench. "What now?" "Veronica accelerated her plans. The article about you is coming out tomorrow in the newspaper. She's portraying you as a man who has lost emotional control, who is being manipulated by an opportunistic family." Eduardo walked through the mansion corridors, feeling lost, and about the evidence against her. She also anticipated. "She found out we were investigating and destroyed several pieces of evidence. We still have enough to prosecute her, but she'll try to defend herself by attacking even more violently." Eduardo stopped in front of the room Sophia had occupied. The bed was perfectly made, but she had left her rag doll on the pillow. He picked up the doll, feeling the weight of the responsibility he had failed to uphold. "Mark, find her, no matter the cost." Eduardo spent the rest of the afternoon looking for Sophia around the hospital, at school, everywhere he could imagine. Finally, as the sun began to set, he found her in a small park near the hospital, sitting on a bench, selling flowers to passers-by. "Sophia," he said, approaching slowly. She looked up, and Eduardo saw that she had been crying. "Mr. Sterling, you shouldn't be here. People will see." Eduardo sat beside her. "Sophia, I don't care what people will think." "But I do," she said, her voice trembling. "My mom always taught me that good people shouldn't suffer because of us. You're a good person, Mr. Sterling." Eduardo felt tears well in his eyes. "Sophia, you and your mother are the most important people in my life now. I won't let anyone separate us." Sophia shook her head. "But the pretty lady said that if I didn't leave, she would do bad things to you, Mr. Sterling. She said she could ruin your business." Eduardo took Sophia's small hands. "Sophia, that woman is a liar. She can't hurt me." "But what if she can?" Sophia whispered. "I can't let anyone hurt you because of me." Eduardo looked at that brave child, who was willing to sacrifice her own safety and her mother's to protect him. "Sophia, do you want to know what your mother taught me?" Sophia nodded. "She taught me that family isn't just about blood. It's about choosing to protect the people we love, even when it's hard." Eduardo held her hands more firmly. "I choose you two, always." Sophia began to cry. "But I'm scared, Mr. Sterling. What if she hurts my mum?" Eduardo felt an iron determination grow within him. "Sophia, look at me. I promise nothing will happen to your mum, and nothing will happen to you, but I need you to trust me." Sophia looked at him with those big, wise eyes. "I trust you, Mr. Sterling." Eduardo pulled her into a hug, feeling as if he was embracing the very essence of hope and courage. The newspaper article was devastating. Eduardo woke up to dozens of calls from business partners, investors, and even employees, all questioning his sanity. The headline was cruel. "Tycoon in turmoil. Executive loses control, manipulated by opportunistic family." Sophia was in the kitchen when Eduardo came down, clearly having read the article online. Her eyes were red from crying. "Mr. Sterling, they're saying horrible things about my mom," she whispered. "They're saying she faked being sick to get money from you." Eduardo sat beside her, feeling the weight of every cruel word he had read. "Sophia, we know the truth. That's what matters. But what if people believe it?" she asked, her voice breaking. What if no one wants to do business with you anymore, Mr. Sterling? Eduardo had already received 3 calls from investors cancelling important meetings. His secretary had informed him that 2 contracts had been suspended until the situation clarified. Veronica had perfectly calculated the damage she could inflict. The phone rang again. It was Mark, with bad news. Eduardo. Veronica anticipated again. She filed a police complaint alleging that you are holding Sophia at your house against her will. She's saying you're psychologically unstable and could be a danger to the child. Eduardo felt the world spin. She's trying to accuse me of kidnapping. Worse, she also obtained a temporary court order questioning your ability to make decisions about Helena's medical treatment. She's alleging that you are using the situation to feel important. Eduardo looked at Sophia, who was trying to pretend not to listen, but clearly catching every word. And what does that mean? It means you might have to return Sophia to state custody until the situation is resolved, and Helena might have to go back to the public hospital. Eduardo felt as if he had been physically struck. They can't do that. They can. If they can prove you're not acting in the child's best interest. And Eduardo, there's more. Veronica is spreading rumors that you've developed an unhealthy obsession with Sophia. Eduardo felt nauseous. She's insinuating that she's planting doubts about your motivations. It's a dirty but effective move. She knows that any suspicion about a single man caring for a child can be devastating. Eduardo looked at Sophia, who was silently clearing the breakfast dishes, trying to keep herself busy. That pure, innocent child was being used as a weapon by a ruthless woman. Mr. Sterling, Sophia said timidly, maybe it's better if I leave. I don't want people to think bad things about you. Eduardo felt his heart break. Sophia, you can't think that way. But it's true, she insisted, tears streaming down her face. My mom always said that when you care about someone, you don't let them suffer because of you. At that moment, Eduardo realized that Veronica had gotten exactly what she wanted. She had manipulated the situation in such a way that any action he took to protect Sophia could be interpreted as evidence of her accusations. Sophia, he said, kneeling in front of her, do you trust me? She nodded, even through her tears. Then I need you to be very brave. Braver than you've ever been, because we're going to have to fight to prove the truth. Sophia wiped her face with her small hands. But what are we going to do? Eduardo took a deep breath, knowing he was about to stake everything on a single play. We're going to expose Veronica for who she really is. But this is going to be dangerous, and she will try to hurt us even more. Sophia lifted her chin with a determination that both broke and strengthened Eduardo's heart. I'm not afraid of her. My mom taught me that bad people only win when good people give up. Eduardo smiled through his tears. But then we won't give up. The court hearing was scheduled for a Thursday. Eduardo had spent sleepless nights working with Mark to gather all the evidence against Veronica. They had recordings, financial documents, testimonies from hospital staff about the medical sabotage. But Eduardo knew Veronica would not be easily defeated. Helena had insisted on leaving the hospital to be present at the hearing. Still weak, but determined to defend her family. She sat in the front row next to Sophia, who wore her best dress and carried her rag doll. My daughter, Helena said, holding Sophia's hand, be brave, tell the truth, and trust that the right people will listen. Sophia nodded, but Eduardo could see she was nervous. At 7 years old, she would have to testify against a manipulative adult in a room full of strangers. Veronica arrived impeccably dressed, accompanied by an expensive lawyer. She greeted people in the room as if she were a victim, playing the role of a concerned fiancé trying to save the man she loved. Eduardo, she said, approaching him before the hearing began. We can still resolve this. You send this family away. We assume you had a moment of weakness and we go back to our normal lives. Eduardo looked at her coldly. Veronica, you tried to kill Helena. You intimidated a child. There is no normal life after that. You're being dramatic, she retorted, but Eduardo saw a flicker of panic in her eyes. Who will believe you? I am your respectable fiancé. They are just employees. We'll see, Eduardo said, stepping away from her. The hearing began with Veronica's lawyer presenting the case. He painted Eduardo as an executive in emotional crisis, manipulated by an opportunistic family who had taken advantage of his loneliness. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the lawyer said, my client, Ms. Veronica Thorne, is genuinely concerned about the man she loves. Mr. Sterling, clearly suffering from emotional exhaustion, was manipulated by a situation that appealed to his vulnerabilities. Eduardo watched the jury, trying to gauge their reactions. Some seemed receptive to Veronica's arguments. Then it was Mark's turn to present the defense. He began by showing the financial documents, proving that Veronica had siphoned millions of dollars. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark said, the person who is claiming concern for Mr. Sterling is, in fact, a criminal who systematically stole from him. The impact was immediate. Veronica paled, and her lawyer tried to object, but the evidence was irrefutable. Then Mark presented the recordings where Veronica admitted to manipulating Eduardo, calling him pathetic and bragging about how easy it was to control him. Veronica's voice echoed through the room. He's the perfect target, rich, lonely, desperate for approval. I can't wait to get married and have full access to his money. Eduardo saw the horror on the jurors' faces. Veronica was visibly desperate, whispering furiously with her lawyer. But the most powerful moment came when Sophia was called to testify. The girl walked to the front of the room with her rag doll, holding her head high with dignity. Sophia, Mark said gently, can you tell us how you met Mr. Sterling? Sophia spoke with a clarity that surprised everyone. She recounted her mother's illness, her decision to go cook for Eduardo, his kindness in inviting her to lunch. He didn't ask me what I wanted in return, Sophia said, her voice small but firm. He just wanted to help my mum. Good people do that. Veronica's lawyer tried to confuse Sophia, suggesting she had been taught to manipulate Eduardo. But Sophia looked directly at him and said, Sir, my mum taught me that lying is wrong. I don't know how to lie to get things. I only know how to tell the truth. Then Sophia turned to Veronica, who was trying to look sympathetic. You said I was going to destroy Mr. Sterling's life if I didn't leave, but ladies and gentlemen of the jury, she addressed them, Mr. Sterling saved my mom. He taught me that there are good people in the world. How can that be bad? The silence in the room was absolute. Sophia had spoken with an honesty that no manipulation could fabricate. The judge's decision was unanimous and definitive. Veronica Thorne was found guilty of fraud, medical sabotage, intimidation of a minor, and several other charges. She would be arrested immediately, and all assets she had acquired with the stolen money would be confiscated. Ms. Veronica Thorne, the judge said, you demonstrated a calculated cruelty that shocks this court. Using an innocent child and her sick mother as pawns in a game of manipulation is unforgivable. Veronica was led away in handcuffs, but not before casting a look of pure hatred at Eduardo and Sophia. You'll regret this, she screamed. I'll destroy you. Sophia flinched, but Eduardo pulled her close. She can't hurt us anymore, he whispered. It's over. Helena, still weak but relieved, hugged her daughter. My brave girl, she murmured, tears streaming down her face. You were so strong. In the following days, the truth about Veronica spread rapidly. The newspapers that had published slanderous articles against Eduardo now splashed headlines about the criminal fiancée and her web of lies and manipulation. Eduardo received dozens of calls from business partners apologizing for having doubted him. Contracts were reactivated, meetings rescheduled. But to his own surprise, none of it seemed as important as before. Mr. Sterling, Sophia said one morning, as they had breakfast together in the mansion, can I ask you something? Of course, Sophia. Why did you help us, even when it caused you trouble? Eduardo thought for a moment. You know, Sophia, before I met you and your mom, I thought success was having a lot of money and everyone respecting me. But you two taught me that true success is having people you love and who love you back. Sophia smiled. My mom is doing much better. The doctor said she can go back to work in a few weeks. And she will go back, Eduardo said, but not as my cook. I want her to be the supervisor of all the kitchens across my properties, with a fair salary and comprehensive health insurance. Sophia's eyes lit up. Really? Really? And you? Eduardo pointed at her. They will go to the best school in the city, but I want you to promise me one thing. What? That you'll never lose the kindness you have in your heart. That you'll always remember that what matters isn't what you have, but how you treat people. Sophia nodded solemnly. I promise. Helena came down for breakfast, walking slowly but unassisted. She had gained weight, her color had returned, and her eyes sparkled with life again. Mr. Sterling, she said, sitting at the table, I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done for us. You don't need to thank me, Eduardo replied. You saved my life as much as I saved yours, Helena smiled. Sophia told me you said we're a family now. Eduardo looked at the two women who had transformed his life. If you want to be, yes, I would very much like to be part of your family. Sophia stood up and ran to hug him. I always wanted a dad, she whispered. And you're exactly what I imagined a dad should be. Eduardo felt tears welling in his eyes. That brave child who had faced so many adversities had found room in her heart for more love. And I always wanted a daughter like you, he replied, hugging her tightly. Helena watched the scene with a radiant smile. I think God knew exactly what he was doing when he sent Sophia to cook for you that day. Eduardo looked out the window, at the garden where it had all begun, and knew she was right. Sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in the most unexpected challenges. A year later, in the same dining room where it had all begun, Eduardo, Helena, and Sophia celebrated the first anniversary of their chosen family. The table was decorated with flowers from the garden, and the aroma of a special lunch prepared by Helena filled the air. I can't believe it's already been a year, Helena said, watching Sophia serve the main course with the same dedication as that first day, but now with joy instead of despair. Sophia, now 8 years old, had grown and become even more confident. She studied at the best school in the city, but maintained her natural humility and kindness. Every week, she visited the hospital where her mother had been treated, bringing flowers and stories to the hospitalized children. Remember when I brought you that first meal? Sophia asked, placing a small yellow flower next to Eduardo's plate, exactly as she had done a year before. Eduardo smiled, touching the flower delicately. How could I forget? It was the day my real life began. The mansion had completely transformed. It was no longer a symbol of isolation and power, but a home filled with laughter, conversations, and affection. Eduardo had implemented changes across all his companies, ensuring that all employees received fair wages, comprehensive health insurance, and respectful treatment. Daddy Eduardo, Sophia said, using the name she had started calling him a few months prior. Can I tell you something? Eduardo felt his heart warm every time she called him that. Of course, my dear. At school, when they ask about my family, I say I have the bravest mom in the world and the kindest dad in the world, and that our family is special because it was formed by love, not just by blood. Helena wiped a tear from her eyes. Sophia, you've always been wise for your age. I learned from you too, Sophia replied, serving the juice carefully. You taught me that family is about taking care of each other, especially when things get tough. Eduardo looked around the table, seeing the faces of other mansion staff who were now treated like family. Maria, the new personal assistant, John, the gardener, and Carmen, the housekeeper, had all become part of that extended family Mr. Sterling, Maria said, I can say I've never worked in a place where I felt so valued. That's because you don't work for me, Eduardo replied. You work with me. We're all part of the same family. After lunch, Eduardo and Sofia walked through the garden, a tradition they had developed. They talked about school, about dreams, about life. Daddy Eduardo, Sofia said, stopping next to the white roses. Do you still think about that mean lady? Eduardo considered the question. Sometimes, but not with anger. I feel pity for her. She never knew what true love was. Do you think she could have changed? Eduardo looked at that compassionate child, who could feel pity even for someone who had tried to hurt her. Maybe, but some people choose darkness, Sofia. Our responsibility is to choose the light. Sofia nodded, picking a rose to take inside. So that's what we'll always do, choose the light. Always, Eduardo promised, taking her small hand, because that's what family does. We help each other find the light, even when everything seems dark. That night, after Sofia had fallen asleep, Eduardo and Helena talked on the porch, watching the stars. You saved our lives, Helena said softly. No, Eduardo responded. You saved mine. You taught me that true wealth isn't in material possessions, but in the courage to love and protect those who need our protection. Helena smiled. Sofia always says you're proof that angels exist. Eduardo chuckled. If there's an angel in this story, it's her. That brave girl who showed up in my dining room and changed everything. They remained in comfortable silence, knowing they had found something rare and precious, a true family, based on unconditional love and the daily choice to care for one another. In her room, Sofia slept peacefully, hugging her rag doll, but now surrounded by all the symbols of a safe and loved life. And for the first time in his life, Eduardo knew the true meaning of being home.